This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to this edition of A Visit to the Mound. I'm Lark Smith, and he is
Stan Huff.
And today we bring back a previous guest by popular demand. Denny Copeland is back with us to talk fantasy baseball after the All-Star break and the approaching trade deadline in Major League Baseball. We want to find out how that affects fantasy league teams and some other things about fantasy leagues.
Yeah, this will be a good update. I got a few questions about that, too, being a novice at this.
Fire away.
Well, okay. Well, let's get started. And okay, so I'm starting in a league. What is it? How do you pick these teams, and what do you do?
Our team is 12 teams.
Our league?
Our league.
Yeah.
Our league is 12 teams. The top pitcher that went this year was Garrett Cole. And he went fourth or fifth. The first 2 or 3 rounds that we have in our league, it's all offense. It's power.
All offense.
All offense.
You have several categories that are tracked, and it depends on what league you're in, whether it is a offense-type league or a pitching-heavy league. It just kind of depends on what stats are being tracked, correct?
Yes. Our offensive categories are runs, home runs, total bases, RBIs, and stolen bases.
What do you do for pitching?
Pitching, same way. There's 5 categories. You go wins, saves, strikeouts, ERA, and a ratio. So that's 5 there.
So when I'm picking a team, I'm going to pick pitchers first because that's
You could, but if you pick pitchers first, your offense is not going to be competitive enough to get there.
Okay, I got you. It's
where-
totally different from just
And
picking a team on
when
the field.
when I pick teams, I usually went to the position players that had the least number of offensive players at it, like a shortstop or second baseman. You will have, a lot of guys hitting at the Mendoza line or just above the Mendoza line in those middle infield positions just because they're good defenders, but they may not be the tops in the league or around the league as far as offensive categories go. That's why I went after a Robin Yount as a shortstop or a Cal Ripken as a shortstop. There's plenty of other shortstops out there that not going to produce the same kind of numbers that those guys produced. So you got to think about it.
Okay, you put them where you want them then, pretty much. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is one of the best players ever is the captain, Derek Jeter.
Right.
But Derek Jeter's offensive numbers were good, but they were not outstanding.
Right.
Okay.
And he'd hit 10 or 12 home runs. He could steal 15 stolen bases. But the other thing that Jeter did was what he did in the field, what he did in the clubhouse. Yeah. And he was he's probably one of the top shortstops. I was a Ripken guy when I had the opportunity to draft him, and I also was a
Robin Yount.
Yeah. And Robin Yount came up to the Brewers and he started playing. He was 19 years old.
Right.
And he started playing. He was a shortstop, and then he eventually moved out to center field. But he was just an athlete.
Yeah. Right. So what? All right,
you're going to get your power numbers from first base and outfield.
Right, and third base too.
So there's plenty of numbers as far as number of players available at those positions. So those were positions I would change. I would draft later in the draft.
And that's the thing you've got to key in on is that when your guys are batting and when Rod Carew played and some other people are playing and they were hitting 330 or 340, that's not the norm now. Most of these guys that are hitting 30 or 35 home runs, they might only hit 220.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But when you hit 220 and you hit 35 homers and you got 100 RBIs and
all that adds
that
up.
other, it adds up.
He can continue to play.
Yes, it's a volume.
So what about trades?
We do no trades in our league, and our league's been around a long time. But as a commissioner, I don't want the headache. You're allowed to make waiver moves, and everybody makes waiver moves, and they call them the hometown leagues. But when you do that, you get a bunch of guys around, and they want to play, but some people pay more attention than others.
I see.
And we pay a little refreshment money and all of that other. So it's like it's better off. I just want them to allow, and everybody has access to the same waiver list.
So, all right, let me ask you a question. So, let's say you have a critical injury. Do you get to pick another player?
Well, that's what I've run into this year. We had the All-Star game go with the home run derby and everything there, but the case in point yesterday, Corey Seager with the Rangers as a shortstop goes on the injured reserve.
Yeah.
And what do you do? That's
a thumb injury, but they're saying now, can he grip a bat?
Yeah. What does that do to you, though? I mean, he's still on your team, right? You're not going to.
Oh no,
he's just not going to be getting any numbers for you for the
I'm
next
not
10
building any numbers, so I want to be able to go. I hope he gets back as fast as possible. But in our baseball, we've got 4 bench spots, so that makes me have to look. I need a player to go draft as a waiver.
So you got somebody to pick up the slack if they can.
Yeah, so you can pick that up and look. But I mean, the key to winning your league is, and it's probably just like real life. You got to be healthy, and you've got to have a good year.
That's right.
Yeah.
You got to
absolutely
good.
You got to hit it. You got to defend it.
Good health is in any sport is critical.
Yeah.
And my other situation, I've got Salvador Perez with Kansas City as a catcher, and right before the All-Star break, he had a grade 1 hamstring injury.
Oh wow!
And he's hit 15 or 16 home runs, but now they're saying day to day, and he's going there. And he's also like 37 years old as a catcher.
Right.
And I mean,
well, Kansas City's not doing that well right now.
no, they're not.
Yeah, the other thing
That doesn't help.
I think that could happen with Major League Baseball having a designated hitter. And there's some weak enough teams, they might even look at him as catching a couple or 3 games a week and then be the DH the rest of the time.
Possibility, I see.
Yeah, we're talking with Denny Copeland about fantasy baseball just after the All-Star break, his second appearance with us here on A Visit to the Mound. You mentioned about drafting. I always like to just draft my team and just let it go. And a lot of the years that got me in trouble because of injuries, but sometimes I got lucky and I never finished first. I always finished second, it seemed like. But I was just one of those guys that put so much emphasis into the draft that I didn't like to trade. I didn't do waiver moves. I stuck with the guys that I drafted.
Well, I think whether any sport, but baseball and football, when you have your draft day and it's a live draft with your buddies, that's one of the best days of the year.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like opening day in Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. So much fun.
So
I see. Well, why don't you give us a rundown of what's gone on so far?
Well, I've got this. What I thought I would do is just kind of highlight my team. My offense doing well. I've got JT Realmuto with the Phillies.
Outstanding
And I
player.
thought he was the best catcher for a long time.
Yeah.
Myself.
But now that kid from
Ruxman
from Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he's a switch hitter.
Yeah.
And home run derby. I mean, he's a player. And he's going to – but I have Realmuto. I've got Salvador Perez. We carry 2 catchers. My first baseman, and I picked him up, C.J. Crone with Colorado, one because he hits in the ballpark in Colorado.
Right.
And the other thing is I think he could get traded. So if he gets traded, he's going to a contender, and that has something to do with the incentive to win.
Okay.
So, and then my second baseman is Marcus Semien with the Rangers. Now this is a local league, and we've got guys from Houston and around Waco. So I mean, Semien, I thought that was a good pick.
Okay.
And then my third baseman is Austin Riley with Atlanta. And right now he's at 22 home runs and 61 RBIs, and he has homered in 5 straight games.
Right.
So those are going to be hard to acquire in trades, but if you had the opportunity to get Austin Riley, then that's a player.
Good pickup.
And my shortstop, because he was eligible from last year, was Fernando Tatis Jr., and he had a suspension and he had to serve 20 games. But he has come back, and he's already had 17 home runs and 15 steals, even with the suspension.
Right.
So the thing about it now is that I don't know if San Diego, because they built their team up to win for this year,
And they're not.
and they're not winning. I mean, you've got Manny Machado.
Yeah.
You got Soto,
Darvish?
Hugh Darvish for pitching. You got Josh Hader. They were built to win this year, so I don't know. They could break down and have
Well,
some
I got to
trades.
tell you, as a former manager and all that, you got a lot of talent out there, but
No chemistry.
There's no chemistry, and it's as baseball goes, and a lot of these other sports go. It's an I, me,
Yes.
me deal. And when they're playing for themselves and it's not picking up the team, I don't know if that's happening, but that is not a winning combination.
I think the money, the salaries have gotten so crazy.
Well, there's no reason with that kind of salary. There's no reason to get out there and compete.
And when those guys sign that big, you watch them when the young guys are playing and they come out of their rookie contract and all that other, and they start putting some numbers together. But when they get that first major deal, it seems like it's a downhill. It may be gradual, but they don't play like. The other thing is, and even in the field, nobody dies for a baseball anymore.
Right.
They're not going to take a chance of getting hurt.
And being on a disabled
Yeah,
list.
the only ones you see diving are some of the rooks.
Yeah,
that are, trying
but they're trying to make it.
yeah, they're trying to get that big salary.
They're trying to make somebody's
Well,
attention.
wait a minute. A big salary these days, $702,000 for a rookie.
I understand.
But
that's not $7 million.
no, you're right.
Well, and this is a good time to talk about it. The Major League Rookie Draft just ended,
Right.
and the top 4 players pretty much went in the order that they anticipated. But Paul Scanes from LSU, and he's probably the real deal if he stays healthy. He just signed for a record $9.2 million.
Bonus.
Well, he was the real deal when I saw him play a pitch at LSU. I thought this guy's stud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And he's backing all his pitches up with strikes.
now the only negative, he signed with the Pirates. But money talks.
That's the way it goes.
And that other part walks, but money is big time.
Well, he's also probably looking at Garrett Cole, who went that route, and now he's making big bucks with the Yankees. So, I mean, it's not permanent to be with Pittsburgh.
right.
And so he will play out and probably move on. But for now, congratulations to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then number 2 was Dylan Cruz. He was the outfielder. He was considered the best offensive player in the draft, and he went to the Nationals for a measly $9 million signing money. That's all.
That's all.
And then the first high school kid picked was with Detroit, and he only signed for 7.7.
But that's $2 million difference between second and third pick, simply because he's a high schooler.
Yes. And then the other thing is the number 4 pick was for the Texas Rangers, and that was Wyatt Langford out of Florida. And they said he was the most major league ready player at that time, and he signed with the Rangers for $8 million.
3 of the 4 players
I got you.
were college players, and they were all in the championship game of the College World Series.
Yes. And so the other thing is that when it goes and it starts to happen, if you pay out the big money, 9.2, 9, and whatever, if you pay that money out there, those owners are expecting that player to get to the majors in a little bit faster.
Yeah, and they're also going to give
they
them
want
that.
a return for
And
that.
they're also going to be expecting results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
But they're going to give them the fast track to the major leagues. They're going to give them every opportunity to get to the major leagues over the guy that they, a Mike Piazza, who they picked last, in the last round as a favor to Tommy Lasorda, who ends up being a Hall of Famer.
And Lasorda was Piazza's godfather.
Yeah.
So anyway, but when you watch the College World Series, and I enjoy watching college baseball, but when those guys are throwing in the mid to high 90s, it's like this is a different game.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really a different game if they're backing everything up with strikes.
Yes. And the
getting
other
ahead of hitters.
The other thing is Garrett Cole's probably one of the few with the Yankees. He's probably one of and there's some others, but Garrett Cole's capable of going 7 or 8 innings.
Right.
Then they bring the bullpen in and the closer, and here they come.
Well, if they would regroup and get these pitchers to
Throw 8,
to
9.
get in shape to throw 8 or 9 innings.
Right.
at the end of the year, if you're in a playoff situation, you got a fresher bullpen, but I don't think anybody thinks about that
No,
anymore.
and the other thing is, I grew up in Houston in the early, graduated in the late '60s, and then came to Baylor. But Nolan Ryan, and before then Ferguson Jenkins, Gaylord Perry, it was nothing for those guys to throw 300, 340 innings.
Right.
Well, there was a game. Nolan Ryan teed it up against El Tiante,
Louis Tiant.
Louis Tiant. Now, I think Nolan was with the Angels and Tiant was with Boston at that time, and it went into extra innings, like 14 innings, and they both ended the game, and they made their next starts.
Right.
So, okay, so what's going on? You look at Nolan Ryan and the way he got himself ready and stayed in shape.
Right.
If the other guys would do that, I think we'd see a different side of this.
There was a friend of mine who was a scout for Boston, and I asked him, I said, who was the best pitcher you ever saw coming up that immediately he said he's going to make it, and it was Pedro Martinez.
Pedro Martinez, yes.
Yeah. So everybody's got that, but I think the other thing is, I think a lot of that contracts and all the stuff happening with the money is driven by the upper management and the owner, and he puts his 2 cents in because that's his money.
Exactly.
We're talking fantasy baseball with Danny Copeland. Danny, you mentioned waivers and picking up players during the season. A player that I've been watching as of late, he came in sometime during the middle of the season, Cincinnati outfielder Ely De La Cruz. This guy has hit the major leagues, kind of like Joe Charbonneau did many years ago. How does someone go about picking him up for their fantasy league team?
Well, the thing is, if you're picking him up and it's a waiver pick, you're probably at the bottom of the league, and you're up high in the waiver order. The other thing is, you got to project that out, and like Lark says, you got to see him happening before it actually happens. When it hits Sports Center on the nightly news and the highlights, it's too late because everybody's seen him. Yes.
Yeah.
And even I could pick him after you see him. But those kids that are watching and playing like that and all of that, I thought it was hype, but now I don't think it's hype.
So are you saying that you need to pay attention to AAA statistics, AA statistics possibly?
I would say AAA for sure. Occasionally a guy will come up out of AA, but usually when they bring them up out of AA, a lot of times it's a spot start or it's something filling in for a DL spot or whatever, but then as soon as that regular player gets active again, the young guy's going back down.
Right.
And the thing is, for young players like that, that gives them the opportunity to get, and what Lark was talking about was the chemistry. When you get to sit in a major league locker room and you're dealing with all of these guys and you've got, pick a guy, Corey Seager or any of them, and you've got these guys that have been there, they produce. The one playing for the Rangers right now is Jung, the third baseman. Third base, and he played at Texas Tech.
Right.
Right.
And then the other one here from Waco, the guy that started and he played, it was a while.
Bradford?
Well, it was Max Muncy.
Oh, yeah, Max.
Max Muncy, and he played, and he got drafted by Oakland, and he goes 2 or 3 years in the minors, and he hits like 210. So he gets released, and he gets picked up by Los Angeles Dodgers, new ball player.
Yeah, and just blossoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yes, you've got to pay attention, and you got people playing. They just want. They'll be around the water cooler at work and somebody's talking about baseball. And that's fun, but I think I'm more competitive than that. So.
Well, Stan, you've been there in the locker room, so you kind of know how that team chemistry will work from different organizations, and there may be some better organizations as far as team chemistry goes than others.
Oh, yeah. Now, I got I'm not going to say the organization, but one organization I was with was taking guys up exclusively from AA. Their AAA team was were veteran players that they were using as emergency call-ups.
Right.
Now the prospects were coming up from AA. Now you're looking at it this way. The reason they're doing that is they're seeing this kid in a major league uniform right now, okay, they're gonna take the hits right now. But this is our prospect because he's younger.
Yes.
All right, so the AAA guys, I coached in AAA and I managed in AAA, and I saw this happen, and it was as far as in the AAA goes, it's not much of a team. Everybody's trying to put up numbers to get to the big leagues,
Right.
but you're trying to keep that cohesiveness as a manager there.
Right.
So you can see some positive stuff, and the more the team is doing well, the more each individual is doing better, and it makes it easier to get somebody to the big leagues. When you're doing your daily evaluations.
Well, the thing is, in our situation here, the Texas Rangers, they did not have a good season last year, but they're still leading their division. You got the Astros right behind them, but it'll be interesting to see the Astros. I think the Rangers, they spent their money pretty much. They may try to go out and get somebody, but it'd be interesting to see the Astros, what kind of commitment are they going to make? And my first thought, I want Justin Verlander to come back.
Well, that would
It's
be
possible
a bonus.
because the Mets. I was walking through the airport one day and just passing through, and I was in Atlanta, and I bumped into Buck Showalter, I think he's a great manager and
That's
everything,
right.
Yeah.
but it's still, you got to have the players, you
Right.
got to have the chemistry, and you got to have the support from your ownership.
Absolutely.
So,
you can see that from Moneyball.
They're talking about Verlander possibly going to San Francisco.
San Francisco.
That's a bad.
That's
a bad
well,
for him.
that's my deal. Of course, that's National League, but I would love to see Verlander come back. And I like the Rangers. I grew up in Houston, so I'm still an Astro fan, and I would love to see Verlander come back and make a go of. He has not had a good season.
Well, and my question is that contrived on his part?
Possibly.
The Mets, kind of like the Padres, have played for this year. They,
Right.
Well, who
they
else
spent
is
money
Max
and all that.
Scherzer's
Max
not done
Scherzer's
that well
there.
either.
And Scherzer, Scherzer's had some. A lot of these guys that you hear now, they're talking about they're having shoulder inflammation.
Okay, so your shoulder's swollen a little bit.
But that goes back to what Stan said.
Put some ice on it.
Well, and then that used to be, you used to put ice on your shoulder, or you'd go into the take the ice bath and all that other.
Yeah.
And that was just a way of life.
We got cortisone shots so we could get back in the game a lot quicker.
Right.
And it
Get
worked.
back faster. Yes.
But I'm understanding that
That's a steroid.
cortisone shots are like too many of them is bad for you.
Right.
That's a steroid.
No, it really.
I know, but it
isn't
is a steroid.
Well, it isn't that kind of. It's a different steroid.
I understand.
But it's a recovery.
Right.
It's from the team standpoint, it's something that we could give you an injection and probably get you back on the field faster than if you just let natural rehab take
So you
care of
got, you're right about that. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We're talking about these players that are going down, and the team is not doing well without them. So look at the Yankees without Aaron Judge. So one guy goes down. They were doing well with him in the lineup,
Yes.
and now they're not doing well, and they're eager to get him back. So you got, particularly if you're doing the fantasy baseball, you got to load it up with the guys that are going to.
You gotta have them playing. It's a numbers game. Now Aaron Judge, case in point, I think he should be strictly a DH. He runs into the wall out in Los Angeles, and he hits his knee, and he runs through the fence and all that other. But was that really necessary? I'd rather have him offensively.
Well, think about it. What you look at the situation he was in, and the situational part of that. Okay, he was trying to catch a ball his.
No, he was, and if you look at the Yankees manager, Aaron Boone, he is as close to Billy Martin used to be, but his deal is he fights for his players.
Right.
It's outstanding.
He's an outstanding manager. His dad was
He's a pretty good catcher.
Bob Boone.
Bob Boone, yeah.
Yeah, his dad and the Boone family.
Yeah,
Right.
Granddad Ray Boone.
Ray Boone with Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I would say that there. So some of that's just ingrained in them, and they've been raised around it forever.
Well, I know if it's Aaron Boone sitting there thinking, what we do now? It's that's really out of the manager's hands when you got a guy going down like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you mentioned it earlier, when you have him calling pitches, and you talk about the young guys coming up, and you got major league umpires that are sitting there, they don't want that, and the new players and the young players, they're going to get bad balled every time to get them started. And if you turn around and say something to the umpire, your strike zone's just going to get larger if you're batting.
Right. Yeah,
and that's unfair to the kid, but that's just the way it is. And the same thing applies to a pitcher. When you watch if you just watch Major League Baseball every night, those kids are throwing 96, 97 low, and if you're not getting the low strike, you're out in 4 innings.
Well, you better be trying to you better be getting them hit it on the ground then.
Yeah.
So if once they get that pitch up in the zone, that's going out of the ballpark or off the wall.
My guy that I had, and he was on my team. It didn't help me, but I had Julio Rodriguez, and that display that he put on in the home run derby deal, unbelievable. So and it was fun to watch those guys talk about it, and I like Vlad Guerrero.
Sure.
Oh God.
Vlad, and I remember his dad.
Oh yeah.
Playing and all that other, but Guerrero was probably the better winner. But that night that Julio Rodriguez hit all those home runs and set the 1 period record, he just got in the groove.
Yeah, that's
So,
pretty good.
Anyway,
Well,
but the other thing that we were talking about the trading deadline.
right. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about that, the first thing that has happened yesterday, Corey Seager, shortstop for the Rangers, went on the IL for, they're saying 10 days.
Right.
And he's got the jam thumb. But I think maybe the Rangers need to be looking for another shortstop. They've got a couple of other players, but there's 3 on there when I was looking last night. C.J. Abrams with the Washington team. He's having a great year. He's hitting, for the last month of July, he's hitting .353. He's got 3 home runs and 10 steals. And that's playable.
Yeah.
Then another kid, he's I'm gonna mispronounce it. Ha-Sung Kim, plays for San Diego.
Right. Yes.
And he's on an 18 to 20 home run pace with 30 steals, and he's hit .331 in the last 32 games. That's a player.
Yes.
I mean, you could use that. And then the other one, he doesn't have the name recognition. It's Orlando Arcia. He played shortstop with Atlanta.
Right.
He was named as a National League starter in the All-Star game, but it was because of injury. But he still got there.
Right. That's true.
So he's hitting, so far he's hit .287, 10 home runs, 34 RBIs, and 40 runs.
But Atlanta's in a playoff chase.
Oh,
I don't see
Atlanta, no.
I don't see them getting rid of.
I wouldn't.
Putting him up.
And I think right now Atlanta might be the best team.
You're close.
I'd have to agree with that.
I mean, just I
Top
like
to bottom.
I like their pitching, and they've got what was the kid's name from the reliever? He pitched at Cincinnati, and now he's with Atlanta. They signed him this year, but anyway, they got the bullpen and they got the starters. It's like Lark was talking about. They just have the chemistry.
That's
And the other
playing
thing is,
together.
and
they
the
got
other
Ron
thing-
Washington there too, by the way.
No,
and he's a team guy if there ever was one.
well, I wish the Rangers would have never gotten rid of him.
Yeah.
There were some other circumstances
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
that went. Then I had a couple other names. Tim Anderson, shortstop for the Chicago White Sox. Solid major league player, but he's having a horrible season. But my deal is, if you're a major league team in the playoffs or thinking you can make the playoffs, try to get him.
Yeah. Would a change of scenery improve his numbers, kind of like a change of scenery did for Max Muncy?
You would think so.
Correct.
And the other thing is he's only going to have to play 70 games. If he gets that lightning in a bottle and he goes, bingo.
Well,
And then the other one that we were talking about, Shohei Ohtani. he
That
hit
seems to
he
be
hit
the
number
discussion
he
everybody.
hit number 36 yesterday, and they're saying he's even a trade possibility.
I wouldn't trade him.
Well,
Well, it's because he's got to end of this contract.
he's a free agent at the end of this year.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for? Cheaper player? Or are you
Well,
looking
no,
for a guy that,
Shohei Ohtani, and this is just a rumor, but he's saying 700 to 750 million.
who's going to pay that?
Oh, somebody will.
The Yankees or the Dodgers?
That's one of the two,
I would say the Dodgers,
probably.
because
Wow.
he's on the West Coast right now with the Angels.
Yeah,
He's already said he does not want to go to New York.
yeah. They can't
Oh.
watch him in Japan if he's.
And the other one, and it's kind of offbeat. The other one, I would say, what about the Mariners?
Oh, that's
Seattle up
that'd be a great
there,
spot
and
for him.
got a great following, and everybody'd come to the ballpark every night to see him.
So they got to
Coming
put out
Ichiro.
that kind of money
No,
though for
no,
him.
probably not. If you just asked me right off the bat, it would be the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So and then
if the Angels don't come through,
and my pick, because they were saying earlier, you mentioned it earlier, Justin Verlander to San Francisco. My pick is Justin Verlander back to Houston. Rent a player, get him going, get to the playoffs, and see what happens.
Exactly.
and a pitcher.
And then there was one more pitcher that I thought, Jose Quintana, and he's a left-hander in major leagues. Whether it's right or wrong, they will still say we always need a left-handed starter.
Absolutely.
And you go get it, and
That's the truth.
he's with the Mets, and I would say that would be something to consider
Right.
to be able to go. And there are Houston rotation. Every one of them's got little dings and all of that, and
Right.
they're out. But that was my point for Verlander.
Right.
They're also talking about Dylan Cease with the White Sox. Now, he's going to cost more because he's top of the line. And the other one they mentioned is Marcus Stroman with the Cubs.
Right.
And then for an outfielder, Houston does not have a center fielder that they can play on a regular basis. But Cody Bellinger used to be with the Dodgers. He's now with the Cubs. He's hit 308, 12 home runs, and 35 RBIs.
Milwaukee just probably wasn't a good fit for him.
So I would think here it is. The deadline's coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
August 1st.
Yep.
Right.
So if you're in fantasy league baseball, you need to be paying attention.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Yeah. So
I'm paying attention anyway.
Well, that's our time for this episode of A Visit to the Mound. Many thanks to our special guest, Denny Copeland, and his insight on fantasy baseball. And we want to thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, anything you would like for us to cover, we would love to hear from you. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Visit to the Mound, or on our website at avisittothemound.com. Make sure you like, subscribe, and review this podcast, and be listening the next time we make a visit to the mound. That'll wrap up this visit to the mound. We certainly appreciate you joining us today for a little baseball talk. Anytime you want to hear something about baseball, you can find us anywhere you get your podcast, or you can go to roguemedianetwork.com for the next edition of A Visit to the Mound.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.